Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe, and on behalf of the Minneapolis Club and my firm, Brimacombe and Associates, welcome to Club Entrepreneur. Club E runs on an academic-like calendar, so this is kind of the official end to the 11th season for Club Entrepreneur. Originally, I started the group, and I know I do this every time, but there's been a lot of folks at the Minneapolis Club that has helped me over the years. So if anybody wants to raise their hand over here, thank you for helping get this going. Anyway, I started the group to support folks like you as you're trying to grow your business. Club E was my way to leverage the Minneapolis Club, who is doing a lot of fabulous things at kind of a micro level, and my thought was to do stuff at they were doing stuff at a macro level. I wanted to do it at a micro level so you could learn something at lunch, take it back to your office, and increase revenue, plan better, find capital, develop relationships, whatever you were trying to do to grow your business. I wanted to try to do that with Club Entrepreneur. I also do that with my firm, Brimacombe and Associates, where I advise and invest in companies. Before we get to today's panel discussion, the business owner with options wins, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Schwegman Lumberg Woosner does intellectual property law. Olson Thielen CPAs is a full-service accounting firm. Irish Titan is a web development and e-commerce company, and I have Justin and Anna over here to my left. Wave at everybody. Irish Titan has done a number of websites for me, done a number of websites for my portfolio companies. They can do a great job for you. Sunbelt Business Brokers is an M&A advisory firm. While technically I don't think he works for Sunbelt, he does work for Proprietors Capital Holding. Pete, wave your hand over here. In addition to selling companies at Sunbelt, they also invest in lower middle market companies. That's what Pete does. McLeod and Company is a holistic marketing agency. Highland Bank, a $500 million family-owned community bank, has been a sponsor for the last couple of years, and I have the Angie and Angie team sitting straight ahead here. So anybody that would like to talk to Highland Bank, seek out an Angie. You can't go wrong saying, hey, Angie, help me out with a loan. And then the Network Connect, where's Dick Summerstead? Right here in front of me. Dick Summerstead and I have been doing the Network Connect for about 4 or 5 years. Network Connect is kind of a cousin to Club Entrepreneur. We're a catalytic gateway to connecting investors, companies, service providers, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the Network Connect with one of the events coming up. Remember, from a reservation standpoint, that the club shuts down online reservations 24 hours in advance. So if you can sign up prior to that, that makes everybody's lives a little easier from a planning standpoint. Clube.com website, you can sign up for a newsletter and receive the newsletter. There's a LinkedIn group, Club Entrepreneur-Minneapolis. There's about 2,600 people there. If you'd like to connect more with the kinds of people you're meeting here, that again is a LinkedIn group, Club Entrepreneur-Minneapolis. There's a meetup group with about 1,900 people in it. That's also available for you to connect up with. And then there's an email list, as I mentioned, on clube.com that you can sign up for. Business of the month, we started that in 2018. So we're part of the way through. There was a fishbowl out on the table where you signed up with when you leave. If you didn't sign up, you can drop a business card in there, and we pull a card out, and those folks get their businesses highlighted through the Club Entrepreneur social channels for a month. And this month, the winner is Breathe Freedom from Nicotine, and Rick Diamond is straight here in the back. And I feel real excited to introduce you to Rick's business, as they specialize in being the most effective way for people to quit smoking, chewing tobacco, e-cigarettes, and nicotine gum addictions. Their 60-minute programs help people decrease their cravings and have a great success rate. I've talked to Rick a number of times about his business, and folks that are looking to break one of those habits, please seek Rick out. And then the other part of that conversation, which is why I feel good about introducing him here, is I think more than anybody over the 11 seasons, Rick Diamond has come more than anybody. So he well earned being business of the month. And so thank you, Rick, for your ongoing support. And Again, I've talked to him a number of times about his business and the success rates that he has and the longevity of his clients as they kick their habits are very high. And anybody who's interested in talking to Rick, please do that. As I mentioned, Club E Minneapolis goes on a little bit of a summer break, but Club E St. Paul has a meeting on June 20th. Where's Chum Struve over here? Story marketing with David Mann. If nobody's seen David Mann talk before, I think I've had him twice here in Minneapolis. That's his second time in St. Paul. I've had him back a number of times. Reason being, he's very good, and he helps folks sell what they want to sell by being a better communicator around the story of your business. So come to the June 20th St. Paul meeting for that. A little bit of a summer break, and then July 17th, Network Connect has a connection event where we put investors together with companies looking for money. Seek Dick Summerstead or I out. We are looking for more companies to participate in that event. We usually have 200 to 250 people come to those events. It's a great way to reach a large audience of potential investors, so seek Dick or myself out for that. I don't have a date yet, but I'm going to try to do a summer event, soiree kind of thing like we did last summer. I'm looking at mid to late August, so just keep on the lookout for that. And then as we fast forward, I know it kind of sounds a little crazy to talk about, but as we get things back going later in August, August 28th, that panel is going to talk about financing. So anybody's interested in raising money for their company, end of August, we're going to do that, and then kick off the next season with Women Business Owners 2.0. And for anybody that was here last January, basically the same panel, and that was a great panel talking about the issues women face as business owners. Okay, so that gets me to today's panel. Dave Williams is going to be our moderator, and I even have the sign here for Dave, not to confuse me with Dave, but nonetheless, he's got a sign. I don't. How about that, right? Been doing this for 11 years. Not once have I had a sign. Dave shows up. He gets to do the job for one day, and he gets a sign. Extra special for that. Speaking of extra special, Dave has known my dad since college, and so Dave liked to tell people he's known me before I was a thing because he knew my parents when they were dating in college, and it's been very gratifying for me to get to know Dave through the business community, and I've had a nice couple of decade-long business relationship with Dave, and so it's an honor to have him here. He helps business owners transition to the next stage of their life, both personally and professionally. He's going to talk about his Triple S system, which is very good. But most importantly than all of that is Dave give back in many, many ways to the community. He's a great guy, a friend, a mentor. And with that, welcome Dave Williams.
Thanks, Rick. It is also a pleasure for me to have watched your success over not only this adventure, but many others. Been watching him grow for a long time. Well, good morning, everybody. Wonderful to see some, or maybe it's afternoon, isn't it? Maybe I'm looking around to see if I think I know somebody at every table almost as I look around. Rick? Lean in? Okay. That's usually not a problem for my voice, so I will try to do that. Thanks for joining us today. It's a beautiful Minnesota day. These are the ones we live for, aren't they? So, and welcome to those of you that I haven't met yet, who are friends in waiting. I've been supporting Rick since he started, and so it's great to see this continue to grow and to be a very viable initiative on his part. For the next 30 minutes or so, we still have a hard stop at 1, Rick. We're going to introduce you to a process that Rick referred to as the Triple S system and try to show you how it has evolved over the course of our respective business experiences. And hopefully there will be something in there that you will have found worthwhile for joining us today. Hopefully you've also met a lot of wonderful new people as a result of being here. So there are just a little bit of housekeeping. There are a couple of handouts on your table, both a full 8.5 by 11, suitable for taking notes or whatever you might, maybe under a basket, and there are also some bookmarks there. Both of those instruments contain some of the things we're going to talk about today, but feel free to use them or take them with you. Hopefully you've seen our bios on the invitation, so we don't need to take a long time to reintroduce ourselves, and I'm not going to read a long bio about each of these guys, although they certainly have earned it. And I will ask each of them to just say something about themselves as they so feel when they're introduced here. As for myself, is this okay now, Rick? Still lean in. I'm not used to leaning in. I guess I'll lean on. As for myself, for those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm a former business owner, but founded and grew and ultimately sold a 30-year successful business at age 66 and thought I was retired. But I was ill-prepared to be retired. So what we hope to share with you is how we can talk about some ideas that might connect these thoughts. When my partner and I started the business, we knew that we were trying to start a business that we would grow and we would build equity and we would sell it someday. That was our plan. What we didn't do is we really didn't think about what we were going to do after we sold the business. So we're running along, living life, growing a business, and as probably everyone in this room has experienced, life intervenes in our plans. I ended up having open heart surgery, which fortunately was not the result of a heart attack. But it was a stimulating, in more ways than one, it was a stimulating event, combined with the fact that my son, who was getting his MBA at St. Thomas, decided he didn't want to be our exit plan. So that one went out the window. And my partner, my 50-50 partner, decided that he wanted to retire. He looked at what had happened to me, and he is 9 years my junior. And so he said, I want to retire. I want to get out of the business. He wanted to get out of business altogether. So we ended up selling the enterprise. And there we were. Neither Bob nor I had really made any definitive plans. So I would ask everybody in the audience if they know the old adage, do you know how to make God laugh? And the answer is, for those of you that don't know, tell him your plans. So that's where we were. Okay, on to the Triple S system. Gentlemen, do you want to say a quick word about yourselves? No? So they're going to have to go with your bio. Okay. Well, maybe I'll end up telling you something about them. Okay, the Triple S system stands for self, succession, and significance. All things that we have experienced as we've gone through this, in my particular case, through the 30-year experience, which has now resulted in continuing on. And we have a series of questions that fall into each of the three categories, which are repeated on your handout. They're also repeated on the bookmark, so if you want to make a note or whatever. And I also would ask you, as we go through, to hold your questions if you would. There are also some note cards on the table that if you would prefer to write something out and send it up rather than to raise your hand and volunteer it, we're happy to accept those and to process them. So let me ask the first question in the South area, which is, do you have a plan that leads you with confidence through the transition from being a business leader and/or owner into what's next? Brad, I'm going to start with you.
Well, what's next can really differ for almost every business, but it's something. For the last 7 years, I've run a group called Inner Circle, and our members would come there peer-to-peer, owners, CEOs, and they would come, and less than 20% had ever had a written plan. And we forced them to do that. And in doing so, after doing that, having it for a couple years and presenting it to the other members at the board, basically what was indicated as 70% had increased revenue specifically because of that plan, and another 90% said they were making better decisions. So what's next? If you're not planning, now's the time to start.
I'll go to the next oldest guy. Mark?
He's doing this in declining order of age, I would comment. Shifting gears between businesses or between business and what's next is difficult and a little bit intimidating. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of business owners don't want to grapple with it. And for sure, you can't plan exactly what's going to happen, but the process of thinking about it and starting to put things in place will yield short-term dividends as well as long-term dividends. Even having conversations with family, with partners, with other advisors will have a positive impact. So don't think you've got to have it all figured out. Starting the process of thinking about it is probably going to be valuable. Dave?
I was one of the individuals that had no desire to do the plan because I didn't see the value. And like Brad was just saying, you start to see the value because of the options that it creates and the decision making that you can align to. For example, hey, why do I need to be thinking about my exit when I still enjoy what I'm doing? You know, I'm 40 years old, I love what I'm doing. But related to knowing the exit, it gave me options to build my team up, if you will. Also, I have a huge goal of working 40 hours instead of whatever they are. Huge goal of working 40 weeks out of the year. And I knew that if I didn't have my plan in place, there's no way that I could get that accomplished. And I don't want to be that individual that has the business owning me. And so my joke is, when the business owned me for the first 15 years, I'm now starting to own it. And so my transition is actually going to an owner and then someday move into transitioning to other visions. So
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
He's been at it for a while. He was 19 when he started the business.
Well, let me add too, I looked at the planning as it was a task, not an ongoing journey. I wanted it off my list because I had better things to do. I think it's an ongoing effort that you have to keep working at every day. And, you know, my perspective changes every day, every week, every year that goes by.
Yeah.
And it's a long-term process.
Thanks. We're trying to give you a smattering, just really an introduction, just many questions that gets asked in each of these three S's. So here's another one we picked out because it is different, which is, what can I do to discover my hidden and visible gifts and talent and use them daily? Somebody in this room probably works in this field and helps people do it. I may not have met you yet, but Mark, you want to go first with this one?
There are lots of great formal assessment tools, and many of the people in this room have probably used some of them. But I would encourage you to simply start conversations with the people around you. Years ago, a colleague of mine succinctly summarized in one phrase the way I added value to a business. And as soon as he said it, I thought, well, yeah, I could point to multiple examples, but I had never articulated it. And it was a conversation with him that gave me that insight. The same thing is true with family, in particular spouses. Sometimes a business owner has got a view of where he or she wants to go, but there are other people riding that bus. And they may have some ideas that need to be part of that, as well as other friends and advisors who understand you as a person, because this is ultimately a very personal process.
Who's next?
I'll go next. For me, it's my leadership team from the business side of it. They've really helped me see where my talents are. At first, I thought it was, hey, they wanted me out of their business or their work, but they're truly recognizing, hey, we got this. You spend your time and energy over here, which was, for me, starting out with 5 employees, we have 54 employees now, so not a big company, but I was part of that whole transition, and I had a hard time stepping out of those habits. So right now, I'm like, hey, tell me where I'd add value. Tell me where you don't need me or want me, and help me break my habits and get out, kind of deal. And so for me, that's my biggest people that I look at. My wife knows my talents outside of work, but she's also pushed me, hey, don't you have people that can do that work, for you, kind of deal? And the answer is, I do, kind of deal. So.
Has anybody hired someone that didn't work out? It sounds like some people have, but you're very unusual. No, it's something that assessments have been around. We've all taken them. I've probably taken 9 million of them, but I look at myself and say, yep, that's me, and then I put it in away. Having somebody to hold you accountable to bring out those talents is so important, and if you're trying to do it on your own, you're frankly not going to do it. And it's something that take it from somebody that has taken a bunch of them, and you name one, and I probably have taken it. Without somebody, my coach, coming alongside of me and saying, this is how to maximize that. It's just not going to happen.
Well said. Let's move to another question. Now, this one you will identify, I think, with your personal finances. We call it core capital. What are my personal core capital needs to transition away from the company? Dave, you want to go with that one?
Sure. Well, what are they? I've gotten clearer and clearer understanding of what I'm going to need or what I'm going to want to maintain my lifestyle. And the reality is I have just a significant amount of my net worth tied up in the business. And so as I look at how to manage that, it's helping me realize that I don't have even close to enough resources here to maintain my lifestyle that I want to maintain. No, I don't, that changes too. I like to increase my net worth I like to determine how I can do that outside of work as well, and then that's also changing drastically, so.
And most people are like Dave. If you're a business owner, you put the money back into the business and try to grow it. And it's, the question is, when you get to that point in time when you're trying to live a different lifestyle, then maybe the 40-40 or whatever, it's how are you going to take that 30 years or whatever that is. My mother lived to be 101, so I'm thinking, okay, I got 50 years, okay. So how are you going to make it through that time? And it's something that to take those risks right now and put it in your business. Most business owners, if a financial advisor really sat down with them, they would say, had you invested what you made, you would have had a lot more. The problem is, you're an entrepreneur. You can't do that. Your nature is to jump
back
into
in,
and
yeah.
plow it back in. And so that's what you deal with.
A couple of practical guidelines. A lot of retirement models are outdated. They assume that retirement is only going to be 15 or 20 years. If you retire at approximately age 60, chances are really good you're going to make it to 90. That's 30 years of retirement, not 15 or 20. So if you're working with an advisor, you need to look at a 30-year runway, not 15 or 20. And because computing power is so inexpensive today, something called a Monte Carlo simulation, which was incredibly expensive years ago, can be done very easily today. It's basically a statistical model that looks at about 10,000 different scenarios and says, what's the percentage likelihood of your having the right assets to get where you want to go? And the rule of thumb that I understand is you want a plan that's going to have an 80% chance of success. That's taking into account what you want to spend, what your income is going to be, what you plan to do, how much you want to travel, et cetera, et cetera. And it's never too early to start looking at that.
Never too early. You know, I would add here that, certainly a good financial planner, if you haven't used one or you aren't working with one, can help you and help you start to uncover the realities of where you are at any given point in time. On the other hand, I would say that it's helpful to use one that knows about more than just the accumulation phase of where you are, even when you take into account the value of your business, because there are a lot of ways to use the cash flow and the tax leverage of the business to help move assets from one place to another. For example, if you're in a family business and you think you're going to sell it to family members, you may want to get the highest price for the business, but that may be a strain for them. So maybe if you start moving assets out of the company before the sale actually takes place, you can sell it to your family members for less money than you would if you were selling to a strategic buyer or certainly to a financial buyer. And so I would just suggest that you think about that as a way to manage the core capital needs of the enterprise that you're working so hard to build. Let's go to another S. The second S is succession. Again, we have 3 questions. Will my business be ready to transfer when I am? Or not? Mark, why don't you start this off?
One of the most common errors that I see is that a business owner sets a date. I'm going to transfer out as of this date. And, it doesn't always work out that way. There may be a better opportunity that comes along sooner. It may take longer than that time frame. Planning to strengthen the business operationally, in terms of a leadership team, in terms of a technological change, is going to allow you to better control your fate and take advantage of opportunities in the short term. I worked for several years with a business owner who had an idea that he wanted to sell out in the future. But he started working with an investment banker to do quarterly reviews of his finances and build up a data bank. And when an unexpected opportunity came along, he was ready to respond. And I don't know the particulars of the transaction, but he told me he got more money for it than he had ever anticipated. But it was because he was prepared when an unexpected opportunity came along. The other common error I see is people saying, well, this is exit planning. I don't have to worry about that until I'm 55 or 60 or 65 years old. Another big mistake. You want to build value in the business on a continuous basis so you can take those 12 weeks of vacation a year, have a little more control over your life. If you're doing that, you're demonstrating that the business has value without you, which is one of the biggest questions that comes up when people look at entrepreneurially founded businesses. Exit planning is just good business planning, and I heartily concur with Dave that it's an ongoing process. You don't do it once, write it on a piece of paper, and put it away.
That was the biggest thing that my takeaway from working on the strategy. You don't have to have this done in a month or a year. You can keep advancing the ball forward.
How many of you here are business owners? Several of you. Take a look at the sheet on your table and the up and the down arrows on the back of the sheet. If you're in the down arrows, realize that it could take 3 to 5 years to get your business to where you're wanting to go. It's that process that you guys are talking about and everything that many start late on those down arrows and get to that point and say, is that all there is? Not a good thing to be able to say in your business when you're trying to sell it.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to skip a couple of comments here just to make sure that we leave time for questions. If we have time, we'll come back to them. Second question is, do I have a plan that gives me multiple options for the future? Why don't you take it, old timer?
Okay. Again, back to your sheet. If you look under the sale to, under the listed category, and Dave mentioned it doesn't have to be this way if you really understand your options and you plan for it, but those are in descending order as far as you're going to get more for the ones on the bottom and for your company generally. But if there's a lot of different options that you need to talk to somebody like Dave to find out about ways of accomplishing that with family members or employees. So,
Mark, Dave, whoever.
Go ahead, Dave.
Go, Dave.
My answer is yes. I got a lot of help from David to help understand those different options. It became clear to me that I want to have the option to have legacy from my family, but it's not a must-have. So I'm looking at ESOP, looking at management buyout, looking at strategic buyers. I'm also at a point where I've had employees that commented, "Hey, are you selling the business?" I'm like, "Well, why are you saying that?" Because you're making all these improvements. To Mark's point, you don't wait to sell it to make the improvements. And you're doing them always. But we kind of accelerated that. And by having that vision of what my options were and how to drive value, it really accelerated those efforts, if you will. But back to the sarcasm, yes, I do have plenty of options to consider, and I feel good that they exist, if you will, and I get to choose which one I want to. Right now, I want to be the owner, but I want to be the true owner. And right now, I'm not quite the true owner. We talked, for those of you who were last week, the hub and spoke, I carried about a fourth of that hub and spokes, and I think I'm now gonna I know I'm removing myself in the next few months from that, and that'll help me become that owner. And then later on, I can decide exactly what I want to do next.
Too many owners assume there's only one option: sell the business. In reality, there's a spectrum, and there are more opportunities all the time. There are now private equity groups interested in investing, sometimes even on a minority basis, in small and mid-sized companies, depending on the sector and the growth rate and so forth. But anything you do to strengthen your business, to grow it, to get decent returns, to have a strong leadership team, to be innovating in terms of your products and services, is going to give you access to more options and better valuations for all of those options.
Let's jump over to significance, to the third S. Many of you may not have even thought about this. I know certainly when I was a business owner, I didn't think that I should consider myself a philanthropist. All my business was tied up, all my assets were tied up in my business for the most part. So I didn't even think about that. But once you sell the money machine, and now you've got cash, there's a lot of different ways that you can use your business and the tax code to make sure that you generate more net assets after the sale and more opportunities to be able to do things with your money. I'll just leave it at that in terms of understanding the concept of significance as our third S. So let me ask a question about, I'll go again to you. You're likely to tip over before either of these other two guys.
I resemble that.
Well, hopefully I beat you. So.
Yeah, I know.
So the third S, significance. How do you want to be remembered? What will your legacy be to your community, your business, and to your family?
Legacy, I look at it totally different today than what I have in the past. And part of it is that leadership and communications are two elements that businesses say, these are my two toughest issues. Now, the leadership side of that is when you are starting right from the beginning to raise up other leaders in your company, to help other people at age 19, when you started, to grow and change and have a desire to be more. And so many of the people, for 20 years, Gallup said, engagement, people are not engaged in your company. A true leader is bringing them to that point, and that starts right at the top. Rather than saying, I've got the position and do what I say, to that person that is basically drawing out the opportunities and the gifts and the talents of others.
Yeah, you.
Did you? Well, I'm dying too.
Really?
We all are. Yeah, good. Business-wise, I think of legacy. I'm going to kind of echo what Brad was talking about. I'm becoming more and more passionate about leadership development and supporting that team. But also, I had a young gentleman ask me to meet with him on a regular basis for breakfast to coach him, kind of deal, and I'm finding an enormous amount of value in doing that kind of deal. And I do want to remember of giving back to the business community by sharing my what not to do list, if you will, or the tribal knowledge. I mean, I joined the peer groups day one when I bought the business because I didn't know what I'm doing, and I still don't know what I'm doing. And I love to interact with a lot of different people and brainstorm. Family, you talked about the time element earlier, about the 40 hours. Business is not easy. It's not a 40-hour a week job. I mean, you're on 24/7, in my opinion. I recently went on a 2-week trip to Ireland, and I came back, and our marketing manager said, "Hey, what were you doing on the website while you're in Ireland?" I go, "What do you mean?" See that somebody from Dublin was tracking. That was me, checking out stuff. And from a legacy with family, I don't want to be remembered that way for my family. I am present, physically. I'm at games, I'm at activities, but I want to be there physically, mentally, and on kind of deal. So I'm pushing real hard to be remembered that, hey, this individual was present with my family. Also, friendships. We all have friends, but I want deep friendships kind of deal. And community, I'm weak in that area. I want to grow in our community, how I can give back to the community. We have a foundation. We have different things we're sponsoring. But I want to open that up to our company and to my family to determine, okay, how do we want to take these resources that are not ours and give them back, if you will, and what does that stand for? So that's where I'm at.
Mark, I'm going to jump over you here for a second, just in interest of time. We want to make sure, we have more questions, we have more answers, but we want to make sure that those of you that are sitting out there with something you'd like to hear from these guys have a chance to do that. So let's open it up to the audience and start. Somebody has to be first, right? Minnesota? Eric, you're first.
Thanks, David. Gentlemen, if you were risking, if your company had a crisis or you had a client who had a crisis, would you offer to them to use their personal retirement stocks, doesn't have to be 401k or Roth, to save the company and let it go into receivership? Who would you counsel them or yourself?
If I allowed it at all, and my inclination is not to do so, it would be on a very, very restricted basis as a percentage of an account or anything else. I believe in diversifying my investments, and I think everyone should. One of the biggest problems with pension plans going upside down in the 80s was people with too much of their net worth tied into the stock of the company they worked for.
What he said.
I had a banker once tell me, we were discussing when you personally guarantee, for a loan, or whether it be a line of credit, that he said there's companies or owners that say, I wouldn't do that, that's too risky, kind of deal. Well, if it's too risky for the owner, why is it not risky for the bank, if you will? So I have a little spin on, as an owner, you have a vision, you have strategies, and you're passionate about it. So I think you have to understand, is this a pipe dream or is this a real not company, but a real strategy that can help you produce the returns that you're looking at. So I'd put some money in, to your point, Mark. You know, but not all of it, kind of deal. We have to diversify.
The first thing I would ask is the person practicing the definition of insanity that he's
Yeah.
already thrown in?
Good bad guy on that.
And so what's going to be different if he throws in this time? And that's something that you have to look at. So it depends, Eric.
The always good answer. Anybody else?
When you look at exiting your business, what are the different types of professionals that you need involved in that in order to make it truly successful?
If you look at a Bill Gates or somebody like this, they have a circle of people around them. They are not making those decisions. They've got your financial advisor, your CPA, your lawyer, and all of these people that are coming alongside of them. That's one of the things I admire about Dave, is that he was in Inner Circle. He had those circle of people that he used, and he left and again brought a circle of people around him to really grow him to the next level and everything. And we need more than just our own thinking.
The number one person that I found initially valuable for that question was an M&A guy. And I wasn't no desire to sell, but I had an idea that my business was worth this, just like what Sunbelt talked about yesterday. And then I quickly learned it was worth this. I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, so, and thankfully I got that about 6-7 years ago. And even though I wasn't desiring to sell the business, but I get really crystal clear on what those value drivers were. And that helps me make better business decisions. And then also we want to grow through acquisition means as well. And it just helps me quickly disqualify when a company, when that owner says it's worth this, and it's only worth this, so.
Dave, I'll jump in for a second to add to your statement, because you do something unusual relative to how you're tracking the success of your business and what you do on a monthly basis relative to valuation
Oh, the business
versus
value.
just economics. You want to share that quickly?
No. I'm not sure what
You use a rolling valuation.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, we look at it every month, and I have my CFO gentleman that's looking at these value drivers, and we talk about them. And it's a little intense, but it definitely helps keep you focused on how you're driving your performance.
Yep, that's what I was looking for. Thanks. Anybody else?
One final comment on that is not only do you need a team of advisors, once a year, you should have a conversation among all the members of the team. Because it's important to have this thing integrated. Not just this perspective on this and this and this. You'll get gaps, you'll get overlaps. There really needs to be an overall plan. And you use a guy like Dave Williams or an exit planner to help you quarterback that.
Thanks. We have time for one more. Paul?
If you were going to put your wisdom out to a business owner as to why he should start buying houses today, what would you say to him? If you were going to pastor, if you were meeting a business owner today and you wanted to start the process of planning for this strategy, what would you tell him today?
How would you get it started?
I want to make sure I understand the question. Is that, hey, somebody's wanting to sell the business, or is that?
No, let's say being the leader entrepreneur, because he's got a long time horizon, before he actually really launching it. Why would you start his exit plan right now?
Oh, I think I can help answer that.
Paul's a banker, so he interfaces with people, and he'd like an answer to that question to talk to clients about.
I'm meeting with a former employee tomorrow that's going to look to buy a business, and I will bring up the value drivers within the organization so he knows them up front. Everyone gets passionate about buying a business, and they don't necessarily understand what their role is and how they can impact it and why they're doing it, kind of deal. And from an exit strategy, I would shy away from talking about the exit strategy. I've done some creative licensing to that world, and I call it the ownership plan. What's your ownership plan? What do you, how do you plan on doing this? That may include, someday, moving on, kind of deal. And that just helps my mind get over the word exit. To me, I interpreted exit as the end of something I'm passionate about doing, kind of deal. And now it's kind of, this is the plan of how I'm going to enjoy the ownership. A lot of people get into the business thinking I want to be an owner, and they're thinking about free time, make all the money, make all the decisions, and I don't have to listen to somebody else. It's not even close to that reality, type of thing. And so that's some of the other advice that I'd give to exit strategy.
Mark, I'll let you end it here.
It's never too early to start planning. Plans, the specifics, will evolve because reality will evolve. But starting to think about, how do I build value in my business? How do I get it to the point where it can run without me for several weeks at a time, or maybe for 12 weeks a year, right, as an executive chairman? And that allows me to start another business or do other things. And for your family, your partners, your advisors to understand that that's the long-term direction is going to lead to conversations about opportunities and options that maybe need to be included in that planning.
I'll wrap up here by just simply saying, just because you have a plan does not mean you have to use it. You can change it anytime you want to. But by having a plan, you're thinking about the people that come behind all of your stakeholders, not just your family, your employees and all of your stakeholders, so that if my heart surgery had been a heart attack and I died, things would not have gone along as smoothly as they did. We had a buy-sell agreement funded with life insurance, all that kind of stuff, but we hadn't thought beyond that. We're going to wrap her up here. Rick, we're on schedule, I think. We didn't get to all the questions we had as options. Well, I'm sure we didn't hear all the questions everybody has, but we're planning to stick around here afterwards for a while, so if anybody wants to talk, please do that. And as Rick would say at the end, we have this room until as long as we want it. That doesn't mean you have to talk to us. You can talk to each other for as long as you want to. Thanks again for coming, everybody.